Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. Those who might be joining for the first time, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants is all about bringing science, adventure, exploration, and conservation live into classrooms across North America and beyond. So now that the new school year is in full swing, we're broadcasting 30, 40, even 50 live events a month for classrooms to join into. So head to our site, exploringbytheseat.com. You can find all the lessons coming up and all the spots where you can tune in and register to join the events. All right. Well, those who've been following along throughout the month of September, you know we've been doing some events with the Darwin200, some really cool events from the field, as well as since they've returned to London. So the Darwin200 and the tall ship Pelican of London did return to London after completing a 7-week circumnavigation of the United Kingdom and exploring the health of the ocean waters, as well as some of the remote islands. So this expedition is part of a larger adventure setting sail in 2021 to follow the most important expedition for natural history ever, Darwin's voyage of the HMS Beagle. So today we are going to be joined by Stewart McPherson. He's a biologist, an explorer, author, and expedition leader. He's going to recount some of the last 7 weeks aboard the ship, as well as dive into some pretty cool jungle adventures. So before we do that, though, I have a great little intro video to play that's going to kind of put a little bit of the journey into context for you. So here we go.
Darwin200 is a planetary conservation initiative. Next year, we are going to begin a voyage around the world, following Charles Darwin's journey on his ship, HMS Beagle. Our mission is to help create a brighter future for our planet. We're going to train the world's top young conservation leaders and create the world's most exciting classroom by beaming out interactive experiments, activities, and resources to schools across the globe to engage millions of students during every single day of our voyage. Our goal is to inspire passion for science and conservation. This year, we're undertaking a voyage around the United Kingdom to test our systems and get ready for next year's global adventure. We are halfway through our 7-week voyage around the UK. We've sailed along the coasts of England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and we're now amongst the beautiful Isles of Scotland. During our journey, we've undertaken studies of dolphins, whales, birds, and seals. Our dive team is surveying UK waters and has already found colourful cuckoo wrasse, anemones, jellyfish, and cup coral. The data we collect is going to several recording schemes for conservation studies. We've brought on a team of young scientists in partnership with the University of Plymouth. They're studying a range of subjects, including pollution, macroplastics, microplastics, planktons, and many wildlife studies. We're creating videos about our adventures and launching them every few days during our journey, so you can take part in our adventure. Visit Darwin200.com for details.
All right. So that was a neat little intro video. You can tell it took place about halfway through the expedition. So you can only imagine what other things they saw and they did along the way. In fact, we had an amazing event live from Bass Rock with 150,000 gannets flying around, nesting, breeding on the island. It was pretty incredible. So I do highly recommend that you check out the website. They created an amazing series of videos all along the way, so you can join in on some of that adventure. Okay, so now it's time. Let's bring Stewart in with us, biologist, explorer, author. Stewart, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. It's lovely to speak to you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did a couple events last week from Canary Wharf in London after an incredible 7 weeks sailing around the UK. How are things going? How's it all, being on land? How your land life?
Really well. It's very strange being back after 2 months on the ship. It's very strange being back on land again and away from the water. I can only imagine what Charles Darwin felt after 5 years at sea. But the last 2 months have gone really, really well. And our UK voyage, which is like a test in preparation for the global voyage, has gone really, really well. And we're very, very honored today to have a message by one of our patrons. The message is from Dr. Jane Goodall. She's one of the most incredible zoologists and conservationists in the entire world. She is an extraordinary person, and she's specially prepared a short video to showcase to the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants schools and students around the world. So perhaps, Joe, you might be so kind as to play that video for them.
Well, hello to all of you. By young people as Dr. Jane. And so, this year is actually the 60th anniversary of when I first went to Africa, to Tanzania, to study chimpanzees in Gombe National Park. 60 years ago, and we're still studying the same chimpanzees, still learning new things about them. They're our closest living relatives. But this year I've been reading aloud the first book I ever wrote about the chimpanzees, and reading it brought back to me so vividly all those amazing memories of when I was first out there. And I remember going along Lake Tanganyika. You can look it up on your map, and looking up at the coast, and it's a whole series of valleys like this, very steep, thickly forested, leading up to the top of the Rift Escarpment. And I remember as I went along in that little boat, wondering, how will I ever find the chimpanzees in this huge forest? And the first evening, I climbed up opposite the tent. We'd set up the tent and sat there, and a troop of baboons came by and they barked at me but weren't too worried. And I just thought, wow, I'm here. Ever since I was 10 years old, I dreamed of going to Africa and living with animals, and I was actually there. It was very tough in those early days because the chimpanzees had never seen anything like a white ape before, and we are apes. We're the 5th grade ape, and they'd take one look at me and run away. So eventually, though, one of them, David Greybeard, and you see him up here behind me, here he is, David Greybeard began to lose his fear of me. And one day I saw him using and making a tool of a grass stem and to fish for termites in their underground nests, picking a leafy twig and removing the leaves. That's the making of a tool. And at that time, it was thought that humans and only humans used and made tools. So it was really exciting. And David Greybeard, because he lost his fear, he really helped me to get to know the other chimpanzees, because they were all ready to run away. But if David Greybeard was with them, and they're not always in a troop, they can travel alone or with little groups. If he was there and they were ready to run, they'd sort of look at him sitting calmly, and I suppose they thought, well, she can't be so frightening after all. I had so many adventures back then, so much discovering to do, climbing up the different valleys. In those days, there were buffaloes and leopards. They're gone now, hunted, killed. But back then, they were there. And buffaloes can be quite dangerous. I had to climb a tree once because there were 2 bull buffaloes and they sort of mock charged. And my big problem was I was up in the tree and they disappeared, but had they gone? Buffaloes can hide. That's what they do when they're hunted. They go around behind the hunters and follow them if they've been wounded, and they can still walk and then attack them. Very crafty. So I didn't dare come down from the tree in case they were hiding. But after about an hour, I thought, well, they must have gone, and they had. And leopards, well, I sometimes heard them at night when I was sleeping alone up in the hills, and I heard their coughing call. And, well, what could I do? I just pulled a blanket over my head and hoped for the best. You know, I felt that I was meant to be there and the animals wouldn't hurt me. And people say, well, how stupid of you. But it wasn't so stupid, was it? Because they never did hurt me. And I found while I was waiting to watch chimpanzees or waiting for them to come to a fruiting tree, I found this peak where I could sit, and there were other places. And I got to know the other animals there. I watched the baboons a lot, and there were red colobus monkeys and red tails and blue monkeys. And the little animals, there's a giant forest shrew. And then there's the pangolin. You know, the pangolin is now the most trafficked animal in the world. They've been brought to the brink of extinction because in Asia, it's thought that their scales have medicinal value. So we're having a big campaign to try and save pangolins. It's possible that they led to this pandemic because when you sell animals in crowded, unhygienic conditions and they're frightened and stressed, that gives a wonderful opportunity for, in this case, a virus to jump from an animal, which might have been a pangolin, it might have been something else. But anyway, it jumped from an animal in one of these markets in China to a person, and that's given us this campaign. It's our disrespect of animals that's led to the campaign in part. We have to realize that animals like us have feelings. Animals like us are individuals, they're personalities. Animals like us are highly intelligent, much more intelligent than people used to think. And indeed, when I first went to Cambridge to get a degree, the professors told me I shouldn't have given the chimpanzees names. That wasn't scientific. They should have had numbers. And I couldn't talk about their personalities, their minds, or their emotions because they said those were unique to us. But that's not true, is it? I'm sure some of you had a dog or a cat or a rat or some kind of animal as a pet, or you've got to know one really well. You know that's not true. So I'd learned as a child from my dog, my great teacher, Rusty, that of course we're not the only creatures on the planet with personalities, minds, and feelings. And so I won that battle. And now you can study those things in animals. So life is a big adventure. There's always something to watch and learn about. I used to watch animals as a child in the garden outside, where I've been on lockdown since the pandemic began. And I used to watch the squirrels and the birds. I used to spend hours up my favorite tree just out here. And that was getting ready for the big adventure. And that was going to Africa. And one more story. Before I ever got to Gombe, my mentor, Louis Leakey, who spent his life searching for the fossilized remains of early humans, he let me go with him on one of these expeditions to the middle of the Serengeti Plains in Tanzania. It's very well known now, but back then, nobody went there. There was no road, there was no track, there was no trail. It was just out across the open plains, and all the animals were there. And there was one other young girl and me as part of this tiny expedition. It was almost no money. It was just Leakey and his wife and a few Kenyans. And in the evening after the hard day's work, Julian and I were allowed to go out walking. And one evening we met a rhino. The rhino was as close as, well, the length of a football pitch or closer. And he knew there was something, but luckily they don't see very well. And he trotted back and forth a bit and then trotted away. Another evening, it was a young male lion, fully grown, with his mane just beginning to grow. And I think he was curious. He'd never seen anything like me and Gillian before. And he followed us for quite a long way, which was a bit scary, but very exciting. And I truly think it was that evening around the campfire that Leakey decided I was the person he'd been looking for to go and study chimpanzees. So my adventure continues. I'm still learning. I'm learning all the time. And you have your lives ahead of you. And so you've got so much to look forward to. Every day can be an adventure if you just think, I learned this thing today. There's always something. And one last thing, I've said that before, one last thing. We're coming up to full moon now. Look up at it next time you see it in the night sky. And just think to yourself, wow, somebody walked up there. You probably take it for granted. For me, it was science fiction. Because when I grew up, there was no television even. No computers, no cell phones, nothing. And now look up at that moon and just think, wow, a person walked up there. Pretty amazing, isn't it? There's no end to what we can do. So whatever your dream is, never give up. Take advantage of every opportunity and never give up, and you'll probably find a way. That was what my mother taught me. Where is she? She's here somewhere. Maybe she's disappeared. Well, anyway, that's what my mother taught me. So just goodbye for now.
All right. Well, Stu, that's so awesome. I mean, her words are so important about exploration and passion and being curious, and who knows what you can accomplish.
Inspiration to millions and millions and millions of people around the world. I grew up reading her books and watching documentaries on her life as well, and she is just the most extraordinary person. And I hope a wonderful inspiration for the children watching this in schools and classrooms around the world. We are incredibly lucky to have her. For Jane to be a patron of Darwin200. We hope to do lots of live lectures with her around the world as we sail around the world in Charles Darwin's footsteps. And Jane really symbolizes that adventure, that discovery, that quest for knowledge that also Charles Darwin, of course, undertook during his voyage around the world. Can you imagine the adventures that Darwin had, trekking across South America, climbing mountains, going through earthquakes? And in a very, very similar way, Jane also embodies that. As you may know from her background and her story, and also her little story there concerning Gombe, she went out into Africa as a young girl with very little backing and support, and made these extraordinary discoveries in a way similar to Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was of a similar age, and of course on the Beagle made findings during the voyage of the Beagle that gave way to his theory of evolution. And so both of them are these wonderful examples of adventure and discovery and the quest for knowledge and the achievements that you can make by just getting out into the field and studying these extraordinary parts of the world. Well, during the next few years, during the next 2 years, we plan to undertake 50 stops around the world, which which Charles Darwin visited. And we're going to be studying the wildlife and broadcasting live from all of those different locations, with wildlife from Galapagos tortoises to marine iguanas to the world's largest colonies of albatrosses and also many penguin colonies as well down in the Falklands and the tip of Tierra del Fuego, and all across the tropics as well. So we really hope we can continue this great legacy that Charles Darwin and Jane Goodall have set up. I'm not for a second in any way, shape or form trying to compare myself to either Jane or Charles. But in case it's of interest to those watching, I was very, very fortunate to spend years and years and years climbing misty mountains in search of carnivorous plants. And to build on Jane's stories there, I can tell you a few little stories from those. Jane mentioned some of the dangerous animals that she saw in the wild, and I can relate to that. On the mountains in Sulawesi, there's similar to the buffalo that Jane mentioned, there's a small animal called the anoa, which is like a small buffalo, but it lives on mountain tops and it has forward projecting horns. And many of the guides are afraid of the anoa, and most of them have stories of their friends or families or other guides being attacked. And just like Jane's little story there, I had a very similar situation. We had to climb up a tree and hide away at the top of the tree because there was a Noah. We could hear it moving through the undergrowth. And we also had to wait there an hour or so until it had gone. So it's interesting to hear those parallels. Well, Charles Darwin, during his voyage, he encountered countless dangers and problems, but that's often where some of his greatest ideas emerged from. For example, as he was crossing South America, he actually went to the town of Concepcion, modern day capital today. And he had arrived just after a massive earthquake had leveled basically the entire city. And it was in the midst of that wreckage and that destruction that he started to speculate how the layers of the earth weren't solid rock, which had been supposed before that date, but actually that the earth consisted of crust overlying the mantle. And of course, he was absolutely right on that. He actually had lots of interesting adventures as well. In the Falkland Islands, he got mugged by birds. There's a bird there called the striated caracara, and this bird is a predator, a scavenger, and it's attracted to anything that it's not familiar with, and particularly things that sparkle or shine. It's very curious, and it explores things and looks for potential food sources. Well, Darwin put down his hat and his gloves, and these caracaras came up and stole them and flew off with them. And they also took his gloves and his hat and one or two other possessions as well. Well, I went down a few years ago to film a series on the wildlife of those islands and several other groups of islands, and had exactly the same situation happen to me. As we were walking all amongst these birds, I had a leather bag and I put it down on the ground, and one of the caracaras hopped up, actually opened the leather bag and took up my wallet. And as it took the wallet out, all of the coins spilled out onto the ground. And this attracted many, many other caracaras. And they all hopped over and started grabbing the coins and flying off with them. So it was pretty incredible to see. And just like Darwin, I got mugged by these caracaras. So it's pretty amazing. Well, we're hoping during the Darwin200 voyage, with the wonderful zoologists and biologists who you've seen during the last 3 lectures, which was the wonderful Jane Goodall today, Sylvia Earle on Friday, and Sarah Darwin last week on Wednesday. We're hoping that you can be part of this adventure in this story of discovery. Unfortunately, Jane couldn't be here live today, but I'm here live today. And if there's any questions we can answer from the school children, or any queries or anything they'd like to know about exploration or discovery, it would be a real pleasure to answer any of those questions.
All right. Well, Stu, thanks for sharing some of those stories with us. I mean, it's always exciting to be in the field, and you just never know what's going to happen. So I'm sure you've got countless stories from exploring those mountaintops and looking for carnivorous plants. So Stu, before we jump to questions, I'd like to share, let me share my screen here. I have a few pictures here from one of our live events that we did. So just bear with me for one moment here. There it is. So we were able to visit Bass Rock, incredible volcanic plug. You can see it here. emerging from the ocean, home to over 150,000 nesting gannets. You can see a nice shot of the Pelican of London, the tall ship, as it makes its way past. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like, another exploration, not so forested or jungly, but
Yes.
pretty amazing.
Absolutely. So bird colonies around the world are very, very interesting like this. So you can go to islands across the tropics and islands across the temperate world. And you find these incredibly concentrated breeding sites. Now, these are very, very, very important for their wildlife. The birds here, this is a breeding site. The reason why they choose these islands is because they're protected. In this particular case, there's no predators at all, no animals that would eat the chicks, because the birds nest just directly on the ground, and the fluffy chicks are completely and utterly vulnerable. They have no defense really at all from any predators. And so that's why they choose these islands where there's no cats, no rats, or no dogs or any other animals that could eat them. So as a result, the island is absolutely crammed with birds. And these birds range over vast distances, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. Here on Bass Rock, which we visited a couple of weeks ago with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, well, these particular gannets fly as far away as Norway and all the way down to the north coast of Africa. So the reason why these islands are so important to conserve is because if you lose that breeding site, the gannets across that entire area wouldn't have a home to breed. So the first thing you notice when you go to these places is that they are absolutely crammed full of bird life, absolutely full, brimming with birds. Every square foot basically has a bird on it. As Joe very kindly mentioned, there's over 150,000. And the noise and also the smell is incredible, in a good way, in both counts. But as we came towards it on our ship, you could literally hear it from miles away. And you could also smell it from miles away too, being downwind. It's such a loud, noisy place. And all across the world, you find these little pinpricks of land that are covered with bird life. We're going to go to quite a few of them as we go around the world on our ship over the next few years. And hopefully we'll be able to broadcast live from many of them. There's some really big ones in the Atlantic, like Ascension Island and Bosunbird Island off the coast of it. So they're incredible places, absolutely crammed full of wildlife and very special places to visit.
All right. Well, it looked like an amazing journey, and it must have been an amazing 7 weeks. I'm sure you've got more video to unpack and edit. I'm sure it's going to be quite an adventure just getting all that sorted and getting ready for 2021, the larger expedition.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's spend a little time with some classrooms. We've got some questions coming in via YouTube, which is awesome. We'll work some of those questions in shortly. But for now, let us go to our first group. So we're going to visit some second graders. Let me bring them in here. There they are. They are in the UK. They're in Huntingdon. Like third graders, maybe.
Yeah. Does anyone have questions?
No.
Okay, Xander. Xander in the back.
Come up nice and close so we can hear you.
How many islands?
How many islands have you visited?
How many islands have you visited? Yeah.
That is a very, very good question. I've been very lucky to visit hundreds and hundreds of islands. I've done some documentaries, some wildlife documentaries, looking at the wildlife of islands, all the way from Antarctica, all the way through the tropics, right the way up to the North Pole. So it's amazing to see the differences in wildlife across the world. Up at the polar latitudes, it's obviously very, very cold, but you have very big seal and bird colonies, enormous populations of penguins down in the south of the world. One of them I was very lucky to visit in on the island of South Georgia, had over 100,000 penguins, all as forming one giant group. And the penguins aren't afraid of you at all. You can walk right up to them. They're not afraid in the slightest. And as you approach them, the ones in the front shuffle away from you a little bit. So if you keep walking, they'll sort of part in front of you. And as you walk further, they'll close behind you. So you sort of end up with a little circle around you, about, I don't know, 3 foot, a meter or so in all directions. And as you walk around, they shuffle around. It's amazing. And again, just like the gannet colonies on Bass Rock, the sounds, the smells, the squawking, the life, it's just incredible to see them all. So that was one of my favorite islands I've been to, but every single one is different. And you know, the special thing about islands is that they have different rules from continents and countries. The further away an island is from a big continental landmass, the more different the wildlife that occurs there. There's lots of reasons for this, but basically animals have a hard job reaching islands. Mammals, like us, generally can't travel very well on rafts of vegetation, which is how a lot of animals reach them. Amphibians, even less so. Like frogs, they can't survive salt water on their skins. So islands that are close to continents have mammals sometimes, and birds and reptiles. If you go further away still, you'll often lose the mammals and just have reptiles, birds and insects and invertebrates. Then further still, way out in the middle of the big oceans of the world, you can often have absolutely no large land animals at all. No mammals, no reptiles, no amphibians at all, and just have birds and invertebrates. And particularly in the tropics, in those islands, you often have gigantic populations of land crabs that have adapted to living on those islands. Some of them are really, really amazing. I was very lucky to film the coconut crabs once with giant claws. These crabs can be over 1 meter wide. Their leg span can be that's 3 foot wide. It can be really spectacular. So it depends where you are in the world and what wildlife you will see on those islands. But we're going to visit lots of those islands as we go around the world over the next 2 years. So we hope that you can explore them with us.
All right, very cool. We're going to visit Miss Jensen's grade 6s. They're joining us in Ontario. How are we doing today, grade 6s?
Hello.
Oh, no, we're not muted. Oh.
We're good. We can hear you.
All right, Matthew, what's your question?
Hi. Okay.
Hello.
Question is, what challenges have you guys faced on your practice journey, and what challenges did you overcome on them?
That's a really, really good question. So we did this little practice voyage to test our systems, get them right and get them wrong, and find out what things work and what things don't. And the honest truth is it's been a bit of a learning curve. Some things work perfectly, and some things we've got to get a bit better. Some of the biggest challenges of all, to some extent, we're broadcasting live from the ship. We've learned how to do it right. On Bass Rock, you might remember we had a few connectivity issues, but we've got a really good system now. We'll be able to do that better right the way around the world. In terms of some of the difficult things, well, food, it's a challenge bringing on enough food for months and months at a time. And as we go across, for example, the Pacific Ocean, we've learned what types of food will work really well when we're at sea for months and months at a time on our ship. We've learned what foods will last really well and what ones that won't last so well. We've had a practice at making some of the traditional foods like hardtack, which are like big sea biscuits. In terms of wildlife, we've also learned we had 2 incredible cameramen with us on this trip and 2 wonderful divers. And we've learned lots of new techniques for filming wildlife and getting up close to birds and other animals and seals. Also about the equipment that we need, the filming equipment, and the technology that we need to be able to film these amazing animals and see them up close. So I hope that answers the question a little bit. Also, it's been interesting working out how it works with the ship, how fast the ship can go under real conditions, what it's like at sea. Because some days we had massive waves rolling in and splashing over the decks of the ship. Other times it was completely calm. We had beautiful sunsets and golden calm conditions. So it's been a huge learning curve and a really, really great one, because when we start next year, we're not going for 2 months, but 2 years all the way around the world. And so I really, really hope you guys can join us at lots of different points around the ship. lots of different points around the world. Wouldn't it be wonderful to film and broadcast with giant tortoises and marine iguanas and lots of other bird colonies, so we can beam live from those places and show you those animals by satellite in real time? Wouldn't that be wonderful fun? Oh,
There we go.
there you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're looking forward to what I think will be the world's coolest floating classroom. And to do it for up to, almost 2 years is going to be pretty incredible. So great to have the students tuning in with us now to get ready for this big adventure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Ms. McLaughlin's group's joining us, grade 6s. They're a virtual school, and they're wondering, Stu, have you ever explored anywhere in Canada?
Oh, I have. I've only been to Canada briefly. I'm afraid I haven't been to Canada as much as I should, because it's a beautiful country with so much to discover. But I've got a story connected to Canada in a way. So my background is carnivorous plants. Okay. There's many carnivorous plants that grow in Canada, and some really, really beautiful ones. There's a species of pitcher plant that grows in the peat bogs across particularly eastern Canada. And I was very, very lucky to study in Connecticut for a year. And I did cross the border and visit some friends. And we went to see some of the beautiful pitcher plants in the bogs in several different places across Canada. But that was only for a few days. I've got to come back and visit properly, because yours is a beautiful, beautiful country. But over the last few years, outside of Canada, I've been going a lot to Asia to look for amazing species of carnivorous plants. These are plants that can catch and kill insects, and in some cases, animals as big as rats. And they gobble up the prey. They actually digest and eat the insects and animals that they catch. I focused mostly on Asia, climbing these mountains in Asia. And many of the mountains that we climbed, in some cases, about 30 cases of them, no one had ever been up. There were no records, no zoologists, no botanists had ever been up on exploring them. And on the tops of those mountains, we're very lucky to find about 30 new species of them. I've named lots of them. One I was very lucky to name after David Attenborough, the great naturalist and broadcaster whose programs I'm sure you guys have probably seen. Anyway, each of these different plants had adapted to the conditions on each mountaintop and occurred nowhere else in the world. So please remember that when you guys start your careers in a few years' time, there's so much wildlife for you still to get out and understand. Don't think everything's been discovered. Don't think we know everything about the world, whether it be in Canada or Asia or Africa or South America or Europe or North America, anywhere in the world. As we heard from Sylvia a few days ago, there's so much left to discover and so much left to find out. So you guys can all get out there and start exploring, just like Charles Darwin, just like Jane Goodall. Don't think discovery is in the past, because it absolutely isn't. There's so much still to find.
Absolutely. You mentioned the incomparable David Attenborough. Many students may recognize his voice from features like Planet Earth, Blue Planet, and he joined Instagram, I think, on the weekend, the fastest ever to reach 1 million followers. Pretty awesome.
You did incredible. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Let's visit Miss Jenko's class. 4th graders hanging out with us in Toronto. Let me make sure they're unmuted. Oh, Miss Jenko, you'll have to unmute for me.
Hello.
There we go. Hey, 4th graders.
And then an add-on what animals are you looking to find when you go around the world looking for?
Oh, what animals are we looking for? Well, that's a very, very good question. The truth is, we're going to try and look for thousands and thousands of species of animals. We're going to follow Charles Darwin's footsteps right the way around the world. So in different parts of his voyage, he found very different groups of animals. On the Galapagos Islands, he saw giant tortoises. You might have heard of these. These are tortoises bigger than dogs. They have shells well over a meter and a half in size. So can you imagine seeing a tortoise that big? We want to go and see them, and we want to broadcast live from them because they make some incredible sounds, and you guys will then be able to see how fast they actually walk in real life. We also want to try and see some incredible lizards. They're called marine iguanas. They're iguanas, like lizards, that jump into the water and swim down underneath the water surface and eat algae and seaweed from the rocks and from the ground all around these islands. Down in the Chilean fjords, we're going to look for whales and penguins and big seal colonies. Imagine if we could broadcast live amongst 10,000 seals. Seals are very territorial, and hopefully we'll be able to show you some of their battles. The males fight each other. They look after the girls. They have big groups of girls called harems. And if we're lucky, when we're down there, we'll be able to show you these different groups. And we might even see the males battling for control of them. They're very spectacular and very dramatic to see. Then way across the Indian Ocean and across the Pacific Ocean, we're going to go through beautiful tropical reefs to see a whole range of underwater wildlife. We're going to try and set up underwater broadcasts so we can broadcast live amongst the fish of a tropical reef. Wouldn't that be incredible? So you guys could then see live all of the marine life around the reef. We could bring in divers to come up with different shells and crabs and different marine life to show you it live on camera from the bottom of a coral reef. And then last but not least, we really, really want to explore tropical islands with you guys. So we can walk around the beautiful tropical vegetation and see real seabird colonies and beautiful land crabs and other life on the islands. So hopefully we'll be doing this all throughout the voyage, every week or 2 weeks, some different wildlife in different locations right the way around the globe, from the tropics all the way to the polar regions. So there's a massive list of animals we hopefully will see together.
All right. Very cool. So we have one more group that I want to visit. Teacher Laura is joining us. Do you mind unmuting?
Yeah, sure.
Are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So my students would like to know, how did you get the idea of Darwin200?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, honestly, the idea from Darwin200 came from, it's been about 10 years of work. It hasn't been a quick thing to develop. It's literally taken about 10 years to get it to this stage. It came from a lot of different things. The first one is to be able to create a platform to engage with millions and millions and millions of young people right the way around the world, to get them excited in wildlife and conservation. We also wanted to showcase the young Charles Darwin. Darwin was an incredible explorer and naturalist. Most people think of him as an old man, but when he began his voyage around the world, he was only 22, and he had all sorts of incredible adventures right the way around the world. So what we're hoping is that by chronicling his journey and making little videos every week live, or every 2 or 3 days live, right the way around the world, and creating regular broadcasts just like this, but from destinations from the Amazon, from the South American Atlantic rainforest to the subantarctic islands of the Falklands and Tierra del Fuego, right the way around the world, we can show some of his real adventures and get young people really, really excited. We want to walk in his footsteps and see the discoveries that he made through his eyes and bring you guys live on that adventure and on that journey. So that's really where it all came from. And that's really what we hope to achieve by undertaking this journey.
All right. Well, absolutely amazing. It was great to hear from Jane today, Sylvia on Friday, and then Charles Darwin's great-great-granddaughter, Sarah, on the Wednesday. It's, amazing ambassadors and patrons for what will be just an incredible journey of learning for students all over the world, and for the 200 young ambassadors who join in and will be spreading word all over the world about important conservation issues and doing really cool science projects. It's quite an amazing undertaking, and we can't wait to follow along as 2021 quickly approaches.
Absolutely. Thoroughly look forward to it.
All right. So where should we go to stay in the loop? Stewart, where's the best place to go?
Well, we'll be posting regular updates on Darwin200.com. We'll be posting lots more videos. We've got about 20 more videos to release over the next few weeks. And of course, we'll keep everyone in touch and everyone updated as the great day approaches when we start launching our voyage and set sail around the world. We're going to have a whole series of events leading up to that next year, including getting the ship ready. We're going to show everyone as the ship gets loaded with supplies and gets prepared for sea. Then, of course, setting sail, and that's the start of our 2-year itinerary, visiting islands and exotic places all the way around the world. So we really, really, really hope you've enjoyed the UK voyage over the last couple of months, and then the start of the global voyage over the next 2 years.
All right. Well, a huge shout out to all the classrooms who joined us via YouTube today and Facebook. A shout out to the classrooms who joined us on camera today. Thank you for your awesome questions. And Stewart, to your whole team, everybody behind the scenes, thank you for this awesome opportunity. And we cannot wait for 2021.
Can't wait as well. And I hope we'll have lots of adventures together and see some incredible animals and plants with our wonderful patrons, Jane, Sylvia, and Sarah as well. So it's going to be an exciting couple of years coming up.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you again soon.